Hi guys, Vertex Education here with episode 13 of the Cryengine free SDK Beginner tutorial series, and in this episode we're going to be showing you how to create basic forms of geometry using solids inside of Cryengine free. So these solids allow you to make some kind of objects in your scene, similar to this. You can see I've got some very basic shapes here. We will be showing you how to advance them further, but you can see we've got some presets like boxes, planes, cylinders and cubes. And we've also got custom shapes that we can make, and we can also modify these as we so please. So one thing I do want to say before we do go any further is that whenever you want to make really detailed models inside of Cryengine free, you know, things like trees or, you know, stuff like that, I do greatly advise that you use some kind of third-party modeling software package instead, such as 3ds Max, Maya, Softimage, and so on and so forth. However, this sort of solids tool allows us to block out the geometry in our level, to, you know, just to portray the base shape that we want and to map out flow, use it for testing, and so on. Also, these little pieces of geometry that we've made have full collision. We can modify them, we can move them, we can use the transformation tools on them, and so on and so forth, and all of this is individually rather than just globally editing them. So let's just go ahead and get started and make some of these shapes. So I'm just going to quickly fly off to a little area where I have a little bit more space, and we'll start creating some shapes. So now we're here, let's go ahead and get started. To do that, all you got to do is just go up to the Objects tab in the roll-up bar, and then just go ahead and click on the solid button here, and the solids panel will come up. And now from here we have the option to create some very basic shapes. So if we go ahead and go to the drop down list here, we can see some very primitive shapes that we can work on to start with. First and foremost, we've got the box. So if we go ahead and click somewhere in our scene, you can see that it's ready to create an object because there's going to be these little X, Y and Z axes stuff here. So let's just go ahead and click, and then we can just drag to define the width and the length, and then when we release that, we can then define the height with the mouse once again. So let's just go ahead and create a couple of these different objects. Next, I'm going to go ahead and create a cone. So I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag just to make the width and length once again, let go, and then I can go ahead and set the height for that too. And we can do that for pretty much all of these different objects here. Let's just go ahead and do that with the cylinder. Now you can see here with the cylinder, it's not very spherical, it's not very smooth. The reason for that being that it has very few sides. Now we can actually define the number of sides on certain objects. So for example, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and set the amount of sides on this sphere to something like 15 by using this little number of sides field here. So if I go ahead and press 15, press enter, I can then go ahead and create a nice lovely sphere here, and you can see it's now a hell of a lot more smooth. And you can really see that if I go into the game, you can see just how smooth it is. So let's just go ahead and continue making some more objects. So far we've got the box, we've got the cone, we've got the sphere. Let's go ahead and create the cylinder next. Just once again click and drag to define the width and length, let go, and then just change the then just go ahead and change that. And then lastly, out of the preset shapes here, we've got the plane, which essentially just allows us to make a pretty much a flat face basically with no depth at all. Now in some cases you may see a little bit of clipping in your terrain, so you can see here it may look like there's little bits missing. However, there actually isn't. It's just a matter of that the object has gone into the terrain because the terrain isn't completely smooth. So if I go ahead and pull this up, you can see that this is actually perfectly fine. So the last thing on here out of the shapes that we can create is it's basically the shape tool, which allows you to pretty much go ahead and create your own shapes in a sort of you know, pen tools kind of way. So let's just go ahead and show you that. So if I select the shape tool and I go ahead and click once, I can then just go ahead and make a bunch of points which will make up a shape. So I'm just going to go ahead and double click here, and then I can drag up and I can make that. Now when you do get to that last point, just make sure that you have that little box there that you saw. So we now have a bunch of very basic shapes. Now it's time to go ahead and modify these using some of the tools that we have available to us. So I'm going to be showing you how to modify this box. Now keep in mind, for the most part, all of these tools and techniques I'm going to be showing you here will apply over to whatever other shapes you're trying to work with. So with the solid tool selected, with that not selected, I'm just going to select the box here, and then when I want to edit it, I've just got to go ahead and make sure that I press the editing mode button here. Now you can see that the material on the object has turned blue. This essentially just tells us that that we will now be able to modify this object. Now there's a whole bunch of different types of selection that we can make on here to modify with our object. For example, if we wanted to, we could go ahead and modify the vertexes, which are essentially little points at the corners. We can also modify the edges, which are just essentially the lines across the edges. And then lastly, we've got the faces, which are essentially just going to be faces, as you can see I am selecting here. So let's just go ahead and do some very basic modifications. So what I'm going to do here quickly is I'm going to select a face, and then I'm going to modify it using the transformation tools. So to do that, all I got to do is just select whatever transformation tool, rotate, select and move, and so on. And then I can just select that and then just move it out in backwards, forwards, and so on. And I can also move it left and right most of the time like this. But I'm just going to go ahead and Control Z so this goes back to normal for a moment. So we can also modify the edges, as I said. So for example, if I wanted to, I could make this edge come in a little bit so it looks a bit like that, and I can do the same for this edge here. Just once again, just drag it in. It's pretty much as simple as that. Now this is kind of how we can modify some of our little shapes here. Now we can also play around with a few different things other than just moving around vertices, edges, and faces. I do advise you experiment with that, but let's move on to the next thing. So for example, if I go ahead and select a face or something like that, I can then go ahead and split it or even flip it. So let's just go ahead and start off with splitting a face. What that does is essentially allows you to split it into a few different pieces. Now you can see here that it's now been split into 4 different pieces, and then we can modify the vertices and the vertices and the edges on this manually. So for example, if I wanted to, I can pull this up, down, and so on. Also, if I go ahead and select a face, I can also use the flip. If I press this, it's essentially just going to make it look like the piece is missing. However, what it's actually done is gone ahead and flipped this, so now the face is actually visible on the inside rather than the outside. So if I quickly go ahead and fly inside of this, and you can see that it's now visible on the inside and on the outside. That, it's just pretty much how it does. That's how it works. This is really great for trying to help out performance and stuff like that. Now we can also play around with some of the vertex settings, but we're not necessarily going to be going over these in this video. That's pretty much everything I wanted to go over. So play around with some of these different objects, see what you can create. I'm just going to quickly make a quick house so you can see the sort of workflow that I go through when I'm doing that. So it's going to quickly Control Z on this little shape here, my little box, to make it go back to normal, and then we can just pretty much modify that. So let's just go ahead and start off by splitting the top, and then it's going to pull the vertex up, the very foremost center one here. Now if I wanted to raise the roof height after I've actually gone ahead and created this, I can do so by simply just selecting the 4 different little vertexes like this. It's pretty much simple. Now you can see what I'm doing here is essentially just control clicking to select more than one object. I greatly advise you do that to save time rather than moving them all up manually and trying to have to match them up perfectly. But you can see that that's pretty much how it works, and all other vertexes will stay in the same place. So for example, if I wanted to be a massive skyscraper like this, I'd make this really tall, and then, you know, I can just move that up, but, you know, just play around with that. So it's pretty much everything I wanted to go over in this episode. Thanks for watching, comment, like, and subscribe. Don't forget that this is just used for very basic forms of geometry rather than super detailed brushes. So thanks for watching, comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.